Thank you, Thomas, for tuning in. Winnie, thank you for tuning in. And if you just tuning in or just join me, please could you just share the information so that we have many people tune in? And thank you. My name is Funton Daniel, and I will be speaking here in the state of Texas. Sylvester BB, thank you. Guess I made you up because you guys are still up. I know there's a hours difference from here in the UK, and thank you for your family. And if you happen to just tune in, could you just share the information, share so that we get many people joining us and if you tuning in, could you indicate where you are? Because it is very important for me to really know where I have my audience and where they are joining me this evening. Or this afternoon. My name again is Fulton Daniel, and I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas here in the United States. And if you just tune in, just share the information so that we have many people joining us this afternoon. And once again, my name is Fulton Daniel, and I will be speaking here in the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Thank you, Roselle, if you for joining in, and send to you as well. Happy weekend, Washington D.C. That's great. And if you joining, just share so that we have many people joining us, so that we can be able to start these important deliberations. Um, Once again, my name is Fulton Daniel, and I will be speaking here in Texas. If you are on the YouTube, wherever you are, you're watching, and I will be live, I'll be broadcasting in both areas, in YouTube and on Facebook as well. And if you, whatever you are, you're watching, and just share and also subscribe to my YouTube channel and if you don't have, it's called Fulton Daniel at YouTube, and then you can subscribe. And it is important that we get the message across, and that is in, and I want to thank you for take Abongwa Israel, thank you for tuning in, and we want to get the message across. And if you just join in, share so we get the message across, and whoever is watching, and I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas. And thank you again. It is important that we, while waiting for more people to join us, and thank you again. My name is Fulton Daniel, and I will be speaking. Oh, that's Joseph Etoy. Thank you for tuning in, joining us this evening. And Sancho, thank you again. And it is important. Just share so we have many people joining us. And I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas. It is important that we have these important deliberations. Uh, uh, Thanks, bro, for joining. I know you're having time to watch this evening. Anyway, thank you guys for joining in. Once again, my name is Fulton Daniel. I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. I understand there are many questions that you guys have, and I too have questions as well. And I think all of us coming together to speak about the issues that is affecting the Anglophone territory. And it is imperative while you just tuning in, just share so we send the message across. And once again, my name is Fulton Daniel, and I'm speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Before I start, I want to take a moment to thank uh, the United States. I want to thank the United States government, most especially. I want to thank the United States government because this government, United States government, is the eyes of the great world, is the eyes of the common people in the rest of the world. Because when United States government turned his eyes against the people, against the rest of the world, the United States just decided not to focus on the rest of the world. You can imagine the chaotic scene that you can be found in the world. There will be continued brutality. There will be continued murdering of people in people that the voice cannot be heard. And so I want to take the moment to thank the United States government. If you haven't, so I just want you to join me today to thank the United States government, because the United States government is ensure that peace and security maintained in the rest of the world. Maybe here in the United States, you haven't encountered the problems that I am about to speak. Then I am letting you know that the United States government, if the United States government closes its eyes in the rest of the world, I can imagine how human beings become the shield of slaughtering house. And that is the problem I am going to be focused today about the murdering and slaughtering of human beings. So, so I want to thank the United States government. I want to thank the United States Congress. United States Congress is an important body. If you haven't understood what is the U.S. Congress, that's the most powerful body in the rest of the world. When they make decisions, it affects the rest of the people of this great nation called United States. And so I just want to take the moment to thank the United States Congress. And I want to take the moment to thank the U.S. Senate. Many of you may not know about United States Senate. It's an important body that works together in collaboration with the U.S. Congress and the White House. So this important body is very, very essential to understand how they functions. And that is why when you talk of democratization, it is because of this government. And I want to take the moment to thank the United States Department of State. United States Department of State is an important body in the U.S. government. It oversees the rest of the world. It oversees the credentials of the rest of the world. And they ensure that safety are maintained and that world peace are protected. Maybe many people in the United States are not aware of the importance of the United States Department. So I am here to let you understand that United States Department of State is an important, as you see, and it's headed by Tillerson, which is the U.S. Secretary of State. I want to take the moment to thank U.S. Department of Defense. U.S. Department of Defense is an essential body that oversee the global protection of the United States and the rest of the world. Maybe you don't understand, but that is where we're going to talk about. And I want to thank you for joining me. If you have the opportunity, share so that we have more people joining in as I'm going to be speaking. And if you, wherever you're watching, oh, thank you from Denmark. That's wonderful. And could you share so that we have more people watching? And if you're from Denmark, that's great. And if you're tuning in, just indicate where you are, because it's important that I understand where my audience are coming from. And if you're here in the United States, just share so that people join in. And thank you again for watching in from Denmark. I want to thank the U.S. Panel representative to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. As I am speaking, the Anglophone I always start with, let my audience understand what is my key point that I am speaking today. The Anglophones originally was a British colony that when the United Nations, initially it was the Germans when the Germans was defeated after the Second World War, the Allied forces mandated that those territories that were under the Germans should be managed by the Allies administrator, and the Anglophone-speaking territory, former West Cameroon or Southern Cameroon, which has changed its name to the Federal Republic of Ambazonian. This is an important for the world to understand. It is important that we understand these differences. And when the United Nations meeting in New York here in the United States, it was decided that those territories that were under the Allied administrator should be prepared for immediate independence. And several countries got their independence within that period. However, in 1960, France prepared La République as a sovereign nation. And when France prepared La République to become a sovereign nation in 1960, the Anglophone-speaking territory was not part of that decision. And when the British prepared the Anglophone territory for immediate independence, La République was not part of the Anglophone territory sovereignty. And so, the people has chosen to remain a sovereign nation. The people has chosen to remain a sovereign nation. Because why does the Anglophone choose to become a sovereign nation? There are multi-factors that has prompted the Anglophones. Remember, John Foncha was initially the architects of these unifications of the Anglophone to become choosing whether they should see whether they can live together with La République. But before that decision was coming, the Anglophone initially under the British administrator, they were being administered in Nigeria, in Enugu House of Assembly. And so members of the delegations of the Southern Cameroon usually travel to Enugu in Nigeria, where they deliberate on this. And when the Southern Cameroon choose that maybe they don't really prefer Nigeria to be together, and they voted in a benevolent neutrality and leave Nigeria, and that they want their own government. They initially had an elected prime minister, Mr. Endele. And after Endele's rule, they decided to form their own. They decided to elect another in government. That was John Foncha. During this era, there was not any chaotic scene. There was not fighting. It was transparent, and that was a transfer of power from one elected official to the next. And so the Anglophone enjoyed this pluralistic democracy. There was not infighting, there was no war. It was just a normal routine. And organization of the election was pure and transparent. When the Anglophone decided that maybe they can join La République, maybe to have whether pooling resources together for the common good of both nations. It was not La République conquering the Southern Cameroon. It was a nations and another nations coming together. The content of the agreement was a mutual agreement. That agreement is not binding in the United Nations. They agreed that they can function as a federal state. They were never a military conquer of La République. Remember, La République has never enjoyed any of this transparent democracy. La République has never elected an official government. La République has always been one brutal dictator to the next brutal dictatorship. They have never had any election where one elected official government is transferred power to another elected officials. So with this pluralistic democracy that prevailed in the Anglophone territory, which never prevailed in La République. And so the Southern Cameroon, or the Anglophone territory, or the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, the leaders of this, or Jumbo Foncha, has discovered that the relationship is not workable, and that La République has taken advantage to overthrow or abolish the entire Southern Cameroon, the Anglophone territory, through either using all crooked methods, either abolishing the English system or decolonize the Anglophone territory. And many of, Southern Cameroon believe in elected officials. They don't believe in appointed officials to decide on the Anglophones. And so with the federal structure, the Anglophones elect their representative. But La République has using every method, using all crooked method to abolish the Anglophone system. First, the appointed La République officials, that is, the appointed La République, the citizen of La République, that is, appointed the Francophones to oversee the Anglophone territory. Remember the law system, Anglophone believe in the common law system, whereas La République believe in the civil law system. In the common law system, you cannot go and arrest someone without a warrant of arrest. You cannot go and interrogate someone without the judicial system involved. Whereas in La République, the civil law system, they can go and arrest you, they can interrogate you, they can brutalize you, and this common system is not workable with the Anglophone Southern system. And that is why when the Anglophone demonstrated that we need to come to a roundtable discussion about the foundation of this relationship that exists between us. La République think the Anglophone territory is a colonial territory and that they have invaded and that it is the private property of La République. And so whatever happens, they will send the military wing, the gendarmerie. The gendarmerie is a French force that was created by France and it is instituted in a French territory. So each time when the Anglophones ask for a roundtable dialogue, the purpose of those roundtable dialogue is to discuss the factual relationship that existed between La République and the Anglophone speaking. Each time when the Anglophones question whether it is workable, it will meet with continued brutality, arrest, torture of La République. And so it has come to a point where the Anglophone has chosen that they have to define their destiny. They have declared their sovereignty. They have declared their sovereignty, and the memorandum of the declaration was submitted to the United Nations that the past 56 years that they have been with La République, the relationship is not workable, and that they want to remain a sovereign nation, and that they want to go back to the 1961 that voted in the United Nations here in the United States to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation. And that document was tendered to the United Nations head office here in New York. United Nations supposed to be promptly response within a specific time to avoid all this atrocity. However, United Nations did not. Instead, United Nations regard this Anglophone speaking, describing them using someone called Francois Force, who is a United Nations representative in the Sub-Saharan Africa or the Central African region. This guy is called Francois Lefort. He used wrong judgment. He used poor analysis to describe the people of the Anglophone speaking territory, seeking for their sovereignty. And the United Nations Secretary General traveled to La République. Instead for him to acknowledge that there is a problem and that the Anglophones want their sovereignty recognized. It is a duty of the United Nations to stand up and accept or acknowledge that the Anglophones deserve their sovereignty. Because the Anglophones has been in a point where many of the Anglophones are not benefiting from the GDP, from the economic productions, even though the 70% of resources come from the Anglophone territory, yet the people are not benefiting. In terms of infrastructural development, the Anglophone speaking are not benefiting from La République. The people have been marginalized. The people have been tortured. The people have been going excruciating torture from La République. And yet we have United Nations office here in United States. They pay a deaf ear. No one is capable. Remember, when the Iranian staged a demonstration not up to 2 or 3 weeks ago, the message, the informations were spread all over the whole major media. No one was killed. No one was harmed. No issues actually happened. But the entire communique was in the entire major media. No one is able to speak about the issues. But yet, in the Anglophones territory, at least 40,000 United Nations office in Nigeria recognize that there are at least 40,000 people displayed in Nigeria that are registered with the United Nations Commission in Nigeria. None has actually recognized that the people of Anglophone deserve their sovereignty. United Nations office hasn't, in reality, speak up about this problem of brutality of La République. United Nations ignored. The Secretary General has been asked straight questions. Do the people of Southern Cameroon or the people of West Cameroon or the former British Southern Cameroon or the Federal Republic of Ambazonian deserve a response and a prompt response from the United Nations? United Nations has deliberately ignored these questions. And since United Nations has deliberately ignored these questions, there is ongoing murdering of people going on in this territory. As I'm speaking, the La République has converted this territory to slaughtering house. La République has converted the entire Anglophone territory to slaughtering house. As I'm speaking, at least mother and children are being murdered, are being shot at random, and yet this doesn't occur to the major media to at least since this is an issue that reckon that United Nations need to promptly respond. How can we present this case and get a prompt response? The people are not ethnic society. The people are not any fighting for freedom. They are a sovereign nation that was granted independence. United States government voted in 1961 of the sovereignty of the Anglophone territory. If you go on my Facebook, you will realize that the number of countries that voted for the sovereignty, and I have a video which I spoke, lists all the names of the countries that voted for the sovereignty of the Anglophone territory. The people of Anglophones, they have decided and established an interim government. The interim government was led by Seseko and the entire cabinet that were residing in Nigeria. The Nigerian government is bound by the United Nations Treaty to respect refugees. But the cabinet of this Ambazonian government or the former British Trusted Territory, the entire cabinet has been adopted by La République. Right now, as I'm speaking, No one has mentioned about it. No one just ignored it. United Nations office here in the United States. United Nations office here in the United States. No one is there mentioned about it. Remember, people are being slaughtered by La Republic. Homes are being invaded by La Republic. And yet, this is a sovereign nation. This is a country. This is a country that have an independent, and it's not like a branch of La Republic. It is a nation on its own. It is a nation that has independence. It's a nation that voted by the United Nations. United States, why I keep on mentioning United States? Because United States is a good testimony of a sovereignty when a nation is recognized. And yet, why these people are being murdered and being brutalized by the evil force of La Republic, and no one is scared to mention about it. The entire cabinet has disappeared of this government, including the citizens have been adopted by La Republic. And yet, the Minister of Communications in La Republic claim that destabilizing La Republic. Those are two separate nations. La Republic is a nation on its own, and the Anglophone territory is a nation on its own. The fact that they choose to live together does not give La Republic guarantor or protected tolerate of the Anglophone speaking. It does not allow La Republic to universally control the entire territory of La Republic, of the Southern Cameroon, of the Anglophone speaking. United Nations did not absolutely grant La Republic ownership of the Anglophone speaking territory. United Nations did not guarantee as La Republic as a guarantor of the sovereignty of the Anglophone speaking territory. And yet, the people are speaking. La Republic has arrested or adopted the Anglophone Leadership Council. And it doesn't occur to the rest of the world. So I am coming here now asking the United States White House. I'm asking the United States government. I am speaking this because as United States government failed to respond aggressively, that is why it's going to be a human disaster. Maybe the Anglophone speaking territory, maybe their GDP, maybe their economic potential may not warrant the rest of the world to intervene. But I am bringing that all human beings are born equal. They share an inalienable right. They have the right to freedom. They have the right to liberty. They have the right to freedom. So I'm asking the United States government, because it is painful when people use people seeking for freedom and people and the government ignore this freedom. They use humanity, they use brutality, slaughtering people, human beings, when they are seeking freedom. How many more people have to be killed before the world responds? I am speaking here in the United States because I understand the value of this, of the United States government. United States government stand for liberty, stand for freedom, and above all, respect the rule of law. And the people of Anglophone expression has demonstrated this value because they have chosen this pathway as a means for their aims. Liberty is the most important strategy. United States went through this process to become a free nation. And that is why people look upon United States for liberty and freedom. I am asking United States government, please, I am asking United States government to send an investigation because this is not an issue that to be ignored. Give me 1 minute, I'll be back. You know, sorry for the interruption. I am asking United States government, as United States government continue to ignore, many people are being slaughtered by La Republique. Freedom, freedom is a universal. United Nations, the United Nations office is here in United States. United Nations office has deliberately ignored this value, and the people has been as ongoing genocide is happening now in Anglophones. Food are being destroyed, and mothers and children are being displaced. As United Nations pay a deaf ear towards this crime, it will reach a point where there will be no interventions carried on. And it is in the early stage that I am presenting this case to the rest of the world. France is the protectorate of La République. France is the protectorate of La République. And as well, the Great Britain is the protectorate of the Anglophone speaking territory. And I am asking the UK government, because you understood the magnitude of this crisis. UK, the people of Great Britain, the US, the British embassy here in the United States, you understood this crisis because the people of Anglophones derive this value that they stand for is because of the British policy, and that the people are seeking. I am asking the British government, do not pay a deaf ear, because as 40,000 should have prompted the UK government to either denounce or held a joint meeting, because I am using the language that I learned because I learned this word English because of the British colony, and I have this part in me, and that I stand to defend it. And I'm asking the British government, do not ignore this. Either you issue a communique, or you stood for the people of the Anglophone, because they have chosen this value to remain sovereign nations, and they do not want to be colonized. They do not want to be stand and dictate what they don't want La République at all. The people of the Southern Cameroon, the people of the Anglophone speaking, has chosen that they do not want La République. How long does it take Britain to absolutely tender a document at the United Nations in response of this? How many supposed to be murdered? How many can British Parliament do something? They have requested all means, they have used all value, they have requested British. There have been has been ongoing debate in the British Parliament. Why can't the British issue a document and request that this revisit of the relationship between La République and the Anglophone speaking? How long does it take the British government to do this? How long? Once people have decided destiny, there is no way you can reverse it. Either British stand for the freedom of the people of Southern Cameroon and choose not to ignore, because the people have reached a point where they are not absolutely prefer La République. Just imagine the Anglophone speaking, they appoint a French divisional officer to oversee the Anglophone territory, despite the fact that the Anglophones are well educated, they are well intelligent, they have sound knowledge. Why should a divisional officer from La République be appointed to oversee the Southern Cameroon territory? Why, what they should do and how they should do it? Why should La République appoint a governor to the Anglophone territory to oversee the duty and functions of the Anglophone territory, despite the fact that they are well educated, they are intelligent, they have sound knowledge to make what judgment they prefer? Why should they be La République? The Anglophone speaking is not a colonial territory of La République. The Anglophone is a sovereign nation, and they deserve to have someone that has the moral value of the education system to be able to decide or rule them. And not La République appointed the French officials to oversee the Anglophone territory. And when the people ask for a common question, instead of answering those questions, they send the gendarmerie to invade the territory. The people have reached a point where they no longer have La République as a colonial master of the Anglophone speaking. I am asking United States Congress, as you pay, United States Congress has written to the Nikki Haley, 24 United States Congress, 24 members of the United States Congress wrote to Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is a U.S. representative to the United Nations. That document that the Congress members wrote to the Nikki Haley requests some kind of a response, and we are yet to have that response. I believe Nikki Haley understands the value and the magnitude. When the Iranians staged a demonstration, Nikki Haley talked about it. How often does a 24 member of U.S. Congress write about the issues affecting the Anglophone speaking because they share the same value as the United States? How often does it take Nikki Haley to respond to these 24 members of U.S. Congress? How long does it take United Nations to respond to the sovereignty requested by the Anglophone speaking? How long does it take? How long does it take? How long does it take? Why should the people become a slaughtering house? Why should the people be murdering? Why should La République sending that? There are 3 forces in La République that has carried on destructive in the Anglophone speaking territory. You have the Gendarmerie and the BIR, Rapid Intervention Brigade. Remember, United States wrote about this brigade that carry on genocide, that destructive force that carry on genocide and murdering of innocent mothers and children. And yet, it doesn't occur to the rest of the world to see this as an issue. The Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nation. When the littoral province, if a littoral province choose to leave La République, that's what it calls secessionist. That's what it's called secession. La République has the right to carry on intervention and rapid. When the Grand North choose to leave La République has the right to intervene because they are part of La République. Anglophone speaking are not part of La République. The people have the right to their freedom. The entire cabinet of the Anglophone speaking has been sandwiched between Nigeria. The entire cabinet of the Anglophone speaking government has been sandwiched between Nigeria and La République. And yet the people have no realistic account of where they are. The people have no realistic account where they are, whether they have been murdered or they've been killed or whatever they are not aware of these people. How can people become the slaughtering house and yet the world pay a deaf ear? I am asking the British Parliament. I am asking the British government. I am asking the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. When the people of Great Britain choose to leave the European Union did not invade Britain. When the people of Great Britain choose to vote against the European Union did not intervene to force Britain into that union. It was allowed to go free. Why should the Anglophone speaking as a sovereign nation choose to leave the union with La République? It becomes a subject of military brutality. Is it because we are not We don't share the same, what do you call it? We don't share it. It is a factual. It is a factual. It is a factual. Because when Britain choose to leave European Union, it's because the British believe that maybe it's not beneficial to the people of Great Britain. Maybe because their goal and their moral goal is different from the British to the European Union. And they choose to vote. But yet, the Anglophone has chosen to leave La République and become the subject of military occupation. Why? And yet, we're speaking about this crisis, and no one paid deaf silence. UK sent the Secretary General. He went to Africa. He went to see. La République does not have relationship with UK, with the Commonwealth of Nations, without the Anglophones speaking. The Anglophones are the people of the Southern Cameroon. They are the people that make that relationship that caused La République become member of the Commonwealth. And the very people that have stood up that they don't want this relationship, they want to stay separate from La République and become the subject of bribery by the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. When he traveled, instead of speaking on behalf of the Anglophone speaking, UK has decided to ignore the reality. I am bringing this that if UK continue to ignore, people will become the slaughtering house. I mean, it is a factual. If Britain has chosen to leave the government, to leave the European government, they did not need any military occupation. There was no infighting. There was no war. It was a peaceful and it's continue going as a peaceful. Why should the people of Anglophone become the proud military? I am asking the United States government, because it's the government that I respected. It's the government I respect. Government of the United States is the value and admiration of the rest of the world. I am asking the US government that as I'm speaking, if the US embassy in La République is not reporting exactly what is happening in the Anglophone speaking, I am bringing this to the US government, because the people have been slaughtering. The people of the Anglophone speaking have been slaughtering by the evil force of La République. I am speaking this to the United States government because it's the government that I respected. It's the value of the rule of law. It's the government that I will stand for and fight for. And that is the government that I will sit and ignore. But when I see my people being slaughtered in the Southern Cameroon territory, why I am living in the most powerful nation on earth, I am asking myself, how can I be able to present this case to the US government that my people are being slaughtered in my territory and that La République has no ownership of the Anglophone speaking territory? And maybe US ambassador in La République is not reporting to the US government exactly what is going on. But I am bringing this matter to the US government. I am bringing this case to the US Senate. I am bringing this case to the US Department of Defense. I am bringing this case to the US Department that the people of Anglophone are being slaughtered to become the murdering house. How can I express it and then bring attention to the rest of the world to stop La République out of Anglophone? They have the right. They have the right of education. They have reached the level of education. They are well educated. They can manage their affairs. They don't need La République to decide what they have to do. They don't. They don't. The Anglophone speaking, they do not need La République. The people have the right to their freedom. They have the right to stand for their freedom. They have the right to be recognized by the rest of the world. How many people has to be murdered before the world can draw them attention? How many? The entire cabinet of the Anglophone speaking has been sandwiched between La Republique and the Anglophone, and yet it doesn't occur that the rest of the world can draw attention, and yet the major media pay no deliberate attention. But I want to thank the Facebook and the YouTube to make us have the opportunity to present this case to the American people. I am bringing this to American people because I am part of the American system. I am part of American system. But when I call back home and I realize that my people are being murdered, my people are being killed, my people are being destroyed, food stuff are being destroyed, every people are living in a forest. As a health profession, I understand the magnitude of people. As a health profession, I understand the magnitude of people living in the forest in West Africa when mosquitoes are being brutally. When insurgency, the people have been fighting several modes of insurgency. They have been fight by the mosquito bite and they have been fight by the La Republique. And yet the people don't know where to go. Because La Republique has become the subject of the day. I am bringing this to the rest of the world. It's time to stand and ask the U.S. Embassy to be account of what is happening in the Anglophone speaking territory. U.S. Embassy is supposed to report to the U.S. government exactly what is happening. If U.S. Embassy is not reporting exactly what is happening, therefore I am presenting it here in the United States that the U.S. government need to find out exactly what is going on, because when people are being murdered, when food are being destroyed, how does people become a sovereign nation? They don't need La Republique to decide what has to be done. The people have the right to their judgment. They have the right to their nations. They have freedom. Fellow Americans, please do not pay a deaf ear. Fellow United States Congress, please do not pay a deaf ear. This is a matter of urgency. I am asking U.S. Congress. I am asking the U.S. White House. I am asking the U.S. Senate. Ask Nikki Haley, what has the United Nations done? Is the United Nations just sitting there and ignore the reality, or they are hoping that the last person is killed before they can rise up and stand and ask that La Republique should leave, vacate the territory of the Anglophone speaking? Is the British government waiting that the last person is killed before the British government can rise and say no to La Republique? How can the people of a sovereign nation are being destroyed, are being vanishing in the face of the earth? We, in this human environment, we have a time frequency in which we must live in this earth. And therefore, those with the power should be able to protect those individuals that they don't have power. And therefore, when these people that have power ignore the reality because they don't have the economic potential, I am asking fellow Americans, please call U.S. Congress, call U.S. White House, call this, because the brutality, if I show you the images, you will not like to see the images. Neither will Facebook tolerate me to show those images of what is happening in the Anglophone speaking territory. U.S. government is an important body. U.S. government understands the value of democracy. U.S. government respect those nations that have stood for freedom. And that is the freedom that we are asking United States government to intervene. Just a simple call from the White House telling La Republique to vacate the Anglophone speaking territory, it will make a difference. It will save lives. Do I have to pay for the call? Do I have to pay? If I have to, then send the bill. I will pay for the call for the United States government to make a call to La Republique and let them vacate the Southern Cameroon territory. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. They deserve their freedom. They deserve to have a government that represents them. They deserve a government that is accountable, not a brutality government. Paul Biya has been in power. Paul Biya has been in power. It's getting close to 36 years. If a child was born at the age of 36, that child must have been having enough education to be able to rule the country. And yet, Paul Biya is 85 years or 84 years, whatever how old he is. What value does, if they were categorized the value of Paul Biya, he absolutely was nothing to the society. He was nothing to the benefit to the society. He is beyond the level of, he's gone. Paul Biya has no value to benefit the society. The younger generation are now supposed to take the transition. And yet that value, they cannot have that transition. They are being displayed. Because one single individual controls the entire government system. He controls the entire military. And yet they have a military that is made up of dumb military that have no knowledge of no clue of the basic fundamental value of its purpose. When the government is set up, the purpose of the government is to protect the citizens. But when the government turns against the citizens and protect one single individual against the will of a sovereign nation, that is the government that I'm concerned of. That's the military that I hate to see. That's the government need to be discarded. That's the government that need to be washed away in the face of this earth. So I am presenting this case to the United States government because they understand the value of democracy. They understand the value of a free society. Imagine a professor writing an article here in the United States. A professor in a university here in the United States writing an article about the brutality of the evil force of La Republique. And he traveled there and he was put in jail because of his opinion. Can someone be put in jail because of his opinion? It's because there is no reform in the system, and that is why he had the right to write his opinion. He had the right to write his opinion, what he thinks it should be a government. But yet, he was placed in jail, where he was placed in an infested mosquito bite, a prison that has human have been clogged. When you understand, when the arteries of an individual, when they say someone has a heart disease, it's because the blood has clotted in the arteries and that blood cannot circulate. La Republique has been clotted and that blood cannot circulate to the citizens of the Cameroon. Because of that, that is why the professor is writing against the brutality, because blood cannot circulate because of the evil force of La Republique. And yet, when one writes against, he's placed in prison because you have a military wing that is there to protect one individual that has been in power for 85 years. Paul Biya became to power in 1982. Prior to 1982, he was the Secretary General at the presidency. He was Vice President. I mean, many children have been grown, and yet they don't know where to go. They don't have basic fundamental food. They don't have basic this. The education system is in a shabby, it's in a totally mess. And that is why the people are advocating for a total freedom. And that the Anglophones has chosen their destiny because they want their freedom. They want a structure of education system that reflects the Anglo-Saxon system of education.
I am pleading with the US White House. I am pleading with the US Congress. I am pleading with the US Department of Defense. I am pleading with the US Senate. I am pleading with US Congress that please arise, arise, arise and stand for freedom of a sovereign nation as they cry for freedom. Because as you stay calm and you look at the greater nations on that has be a threat to the United States and ignore the smaller nations, I am here to let the United States Congress that if you don't open your eyes, before you close your eyes, the entire people have been wiped out. It is important that US look this very critically. It is important that US Congress, it is important that US does not wait for a response. They need to act right now, swiftly and immediately. 40,000 people are in Nigeria. The entire cabinet of the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, the former British territory, has been sandwiched, has been squeezed. No one is able to give exactly accurate information where these leaders are. No one just ignore. Anyone, Nigerian government just stay quiet. Nigerian government remains silent. As US remains silent, as the rest of the world remains silent, that is why the genocide will continue. That is why the suicide will continue. And that it will reach a point of escalation in such a way that there will be no solution because you remain silent. A single call from the White House, call La République, call the Unity Party, call La République. A single call from the White House will make a dynamic change for the Anglophone speaking. A single call from the White House. I am here as citizens here in the United States, and I cannot imagine my people have been slaughtering. Each time when I see those images, I am kind of concerned about, is it a reality? How can I beg the United States government to intervene? How? Do I have to roll on the ground? Do I have to be scrubbing my stomach on the ground? United States, how? What can I present the case? How? The people of the Anglophone speaking has the right to their freedom. They have the right to decide their destiny. They have the right to choose. Because the most important reference that I can ever use to present the case of the Anglophone speaking is the people of Great Britain. Because when the people of Great Britain choose to remain independent from the European Union, there was no infighting. There was no war. There was nothing. It was peaceful. And they are living their life as they chosen. Why can the people of the Anglophone speaking not remain there independent from La République? Why can they not declare their sovereign nation? Why should they become the subject of persecution? Why? The entire cabinet, the entire government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, and now no one is able to give accurately exactly where they are. And it doesn't matter to the rest of the world because it is the race that is not reckoned. And therefore, that is why when the people of Great Britain crawl, the whole world was announcing the problem. But when the Southern Cameroon, that 40,000 people have been evacuated their land, they are living in the forest, they are being beaten by the infested mosquitoes. Their homes have been burned, their entire property have been destroyed. The harvesting season is gone, and the food that they have harvested has all been destroyed by the evil force of La Republic. And yet, when we sing and talk about it, no one cares about it. How can we present this case? How? Because a simple call from the US government, it makes a difference to this Anglophone speaking reality. And the people of the Anglophone speaking, they understand that we physically here in the most powerful nation on earth are their eyes. They believe that we speak on their behalf. They understand the value we are here in this most wonderful and the most prosperous, the most great nations on earth. And the people look upon us as their brightest future for their sovereignty, so they feel well protected and that they will be recognized. And yet we are here speaking about the problem that is happening and nobody pays close attention. When mother comes home and realizes that his all basic crops has been destroyed, his home, it took probably the entire family, entire decade to be able to build a small hut for their benefit, to keep their children, to live and have their own future within their own level of their standard, and come home and realize that they have been burned down by the evil force of La République called La Intervention. Jeanne-Marie has been burned down, and yet we are here pleading for the world to have a say, and no one is able to come to the knowledge. And yet we have their embassy physically here in the United States. I am asking Congress, it's time US Congress ask nations to physically be accountable each year to tell the progress in their country. Because once this country becomes to tell, the United States government can be able to compare these two analyses, whether the government is telling lies or the government is speaking the truth. Because US Congress is the most powerful Congress in the rest of the world. Either US Congress stand for the human freedom, or US Congress stand for destruction of the human freedom. Enough has gone, enough is enough. I value the US Congress. I value the United States government. I value the US Department of State, because they understand the fundamental principles of the value of human being, the value of human freedom. And that is why the United States stand that they must protect the people of human life. And when the human life are pleading to the United States government, and the United States government want to take a law process, I am asking you to act now, because the problem is getting worse. The problem is getting to the worst state. The Anglophone speaking is not a colonial territory. The Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nation that their independence was recognized. And therefore, if they want to stay neutral, it doesn't need La République rapid intervention to force them to stay. If a woman can be separate from the husband, if a woman can choose to separate and the world recognize and the judicial system recognize that they are separate, why can't the people of Southern Cameroon? If the people of Great Britain can choose to separate from the European Union on a vote that they choose to join the Union, and now they choose to leave the Union, there was no infighting. Why should the people of Southern Cameroon not leave La République? How do we have to present this? When an internet was shut down, the Anglophone speaking is not just children. That La République can do whatever it thinks they can. When La République shut internet, the people were blindfolded. They were continuing murdering. And right now that I'm speaking, we don't know whether there is an internet really existing in the Anglophone territory. How can we? How I am asking the US government, if you're watching and you know you can do something, will you call the US Congress? If you know you can do something, will you call the US Department of Defense? If you know you have access, please make a phone call, because when you make a phone call, can make a difference in the life of people that have been slaughtering as each day passes by. I understand that you have a relationship, that you can do something and that it will make a difference to the slaughtering of people. Will you do that? It is very unbelievable. It is very unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable that when a certain class of the society become a slaughtering house, when people are being destructively by a certain government that has no power over the jurisdiction of the sovereign people, and then the people have become the slaughtering house, and the world remain neutral. United Nations is their duty, is their responsibility, because part of the US citizens' taxes are used to fund this United Nations office here in New York. And yet the people are being slaughtered around the world, and they pay a deaf ear because they have a certain individual that share gold to them. Because as La Republic is sharing the gold, it has nothing for them to care about the Anglophone speaking. As Britain pay a deaf ear, as they did not recognize that they were the master that colonized the Anglophone speaking. I am asking the British Parliament, could you step up and do something? I am asking the British Prime Minister, could you step up and do something? Because a British Prime Minister held a joint conference and talk about the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, the Anglophone speaking territory. It can make a difference to the rest of the world. But yet they remain silent. I am asking the Queen. I understand the Queen of England understand the value of the Anglophone speaking. They understand the rule of law. They understand these basic fundamental principles. And yet when the Anglophone ask King for the rapid intervention and the people are being slaughtered, and you have the British embassy physical in Cameroon and doesn't give accountability of the suicide murdering carried on by the Republic on the Anglophone speaking, and yet they stand for as a people of a sovereignty, and they're asking British government, and yet British government doesn't see that as an issue. They can stand and talk about it. Because if British government write a memorandum and forward to the United Nations, it will call an emergency session to discuss the crisis of the Anglophone speaking, and yet the people of Britain ignore it. No one cares about the Anglophone speaking. How many people should be murdered before British Parliament can convene and write a letter, table it here in the United States, and say the people of the sovereign nation, the people whom I colonize, the people I stand for, are here being brutalized, are being murdered by the evil force of La Republic, and yet we stand here as the subject of murdering. How many people should be murdered before British government responds? How many? How many? How many? The Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nation. They are not any fighting for freedom. They are sovereign nations. British government has the duty and responsibility to able to write to the United Nations head office here that because it's a single call asking the British representative here in the United States that table a bill to the United Nations that the Anglophone speaking territory deserve to be heard. They deserve their freedom. I was the colonial territory of this sovereign nation. I choose to table their bill, and I voted, and United States government voted for the sovereignty of the Anglophone speaking. And yet the people have been brutalized. Yet they're being murdered. And I, as a former colonial master, I stand and I recognize these sovereign people. Britain step up your role and speak the truth, because we don't want this more continual murder and genocide happening in the Anglophone territory. I believe that if Britain step up its role, if Britain write to the United Nations and tell them and table a bill, it's just a single call, and table a bill that the people of the Anglophone speaking, the people whom I colonize, the people whom the United Nations mandate them to prepare them for sovereignty, the people have chosen that they don't want the relationship with La Republic and they want their freedom. And it is up to Britain to do that and act and prevent this human slaughtering. When will Britain do this, and how soon? Does the Britain want the entire country to be slaughtering before they can act? Oh yes, we will think about it. We are going to consider about it. We are looking about it. No. Action, action now. Action now. It's not time for considering. It's not time to look at it. It's not time whether we should write a bill, send to the United Nations that the people of the Anglophone speaking have chosen the one their destiny, they want their freedom. And the USM and the ambassador here in the United States will act upon it. If the British Prime Minister act as a matter of urgency and say the people have chosen their destiny, how often can the British do that? I believe they should. Each time you pick a phone call and you call back home, they say this one has been murdered. Each time we pick a phone call, they say we don't have food. We are living in the forest. Should they be living in the forest? Absolutely no. What benefit does La Republic have over the Anglophone speaking? What benefit? They have mutually no benefit. There is no investment that has been carried on by La Republic in the Anglophone territory, despite the fact that they control all the central government. And yet the Anglophones are a sovereign nation on its own. They want their destiny, and they have people that are ready to decide that destiny. And we are asking the rest of the world, it's time to act now, because as you keep on silent, and as you keep on silent, the people are going to suffer persecution. I want to take a moment to thank you. That I know you have a duty to do something. I know you have a duty to call someone that can do something about the sovereignty of the Anglophone territory. And I'm speaking to you directly because I understand you not understand this. And so if you make that phone call, can make a difference and save the life of the Anglophone speaking person. And so I'm asking you to use that initiative and do it. And thank you for watching. It was a great time speaking with you live.